A millionaire CEO entered the wrong room on a Caribbean cruise ship and was shocked to see the black woman he once loved, with two identical twin boys who had his eyes. But before we dive into this story of second chances and buried secrets, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. Donna Harrison stood at the port of Miami Cruise Terminal, her palms sweating as she clutched 3 boarding passes and tried to keep her 7-year-old twins from bolting into the crowd. She'd worked double shifts at the hospital for 18 months to afford this trip. One week where Daniel and Duke could see the world through the portholes of a luxury ship instead of the cracked windows of their cramped apartment. "Mom, look how big it is!" Duke shrieked, pressing his honey-brown face against the terminal glass. His twin brother Daniel stood beside him, identical curls bouncing as he jumped up and down. Donna's chest tightened with pride and worry in equal measure. She'd promised them this adventure, even if it meant her savings account was now dangerously close to empty. She pulled out her phone, quickly checking her balance. $300 left. That would have to cover emergencies, tips, and anything the boys needed for the next week. She inhaled sharply, then locked the screen and forced a bright smile. Her babies deserved this moment of joy, and she wouldn't let her financial anxiety steal it from them. A few yards away, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the VIP entrance. Lincoln King stepped out, 6 feet 3 inches of tailored perfection in a cream linen suit that probably cost more than Donna's monthly rent. His assistant scrambled behind him with 2 garment bags and a leather portfolio, rattling off last-minute details about the billion-dollar merger he was finalizing aboard this floating palace. Lincoln barely listened. His mind was already 3 moves ahead: the contract signing in the Pacific Suite, the celebratory dinner with investors, the press release that would send his company's stock soaring. He'd built an empire from nothing, and he never looked back. Looking back only reminded him of choices he'd rather forget. The twins fidgeted as Donna moved them through the boarding line, their excitement bubbling over despite the long wait. She didn't notice the tall man in the cream suit bypassing the line entirely through the VIP entrance, his polished Oxford shoes clicking against marble as he disappeared into the ship's upper decks. Inside, the cruise ship was a cathedral of luxury. Glittering chandeliers, marble columns, and endless corridors that seemed to lead to hidden worlds. Donna held both boys' hands tightly as they gaped at everything. The grand piano in the atrium, the chocolate fountain in the cafe, the sweeping staircase that looked like something from a fairy tale. "Can we go swimming right now?" Daniel begged, tugging at her hand. "After we find our room and unpack," Donna promised, consulting the map the crew member had given her. Deck 6, interior cabin 614. She herded the boys toward the elevator, their voices echoing off the walls. Several decks above, Lincoln entered his suite, a sprawling 3-room residence with floor-to-ceiling windows, a private balcony, and enough space to host a small conference. His assistant confirmed that the contract signing would take place in the Imperial Suite on Deck 12 at 9 p.m. Lincoln nodded absently, already texting his legal team. He had no idea that just 6 decks below him, a woman he'd loved and abandoned 8 years ago was tucking their sons into bunk beds. The afternoon dissolved into a blur of exploration. Donna took the twins to the pool deck where they stood frozen in wonder at the massive water slides and crystal blue water. Lincoln passed through the same area an hour later, phone pressed to his ear, discussing quarterly projections. He walked within 10 feet of where Donna had been standing, but she'd already moved on to the buffet. At dinner, they sat in the same vast dining room, Donna and the boys near the dessert station, Lincoln at a private table by the windows, eating separate meals, living separate lives, orbiting each other like planets that would never collide. Until that night, Lincoln stood in his suite at 8:45, straightening his tie and reviewing the merger documents one final time. His phone buzzed. A text from his lead investor. Change of plans. Meeting moved to Suite 614. 9 p.m. sharp. He frowned. Suite 614? That seemed oddly modest for a deal of this magnitude. But perhaps the Imperial Suite had a scheduling conflict. He grabbed his portfolio and headed for the elevator. Meanwhile, Donna had finally gotten the twins to settle down. They'd spent 2 hours in the pool, another hour at the arcade, and were now exhausted and giggly in their matching dinosaur pajamas. She'd read them a story about pirates and treasure, and their eyelids were already drooping. "Good night, my beautiful boys," she whispered, kissing each forehead. "Love you, Mommy," they mumbled in unison. She dimmed the lights, leaving only the soft glow of the bathroom nightlight, and climbed into her own bed. The gentle rocking of the ship and the distant sound of waves lulled her toward sleep. Lincoln stepped off the elevator on deck 6, his mind running through his opening remarks. He walked briskly down the corridor, checking room numbers. 610, 612, 614. He stopped in front of the door, took a breath, and pulled out the key card his assistant had given him for emergency access to meeting rooms. It didn't work. He frowned and knocked firmly. Perhaps someone inside would open it. When no one answered, he tried the handle. It turned. The door swung open. Lincoln stepped inside, already speaking. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the confusion with the room change, but let's get straight to—" He froze. The words died in his throat. The cabin was small, dimly lit, nothing like a conference suite. And sitting bolt upright in the narrow bed, eyes wide with shock and something darker, fury, perhaps, or fear, was a woman he'd spent 8 years trying to forget. "Lincoln," Donna breathed, her voice barely audible. Time stopped. Behind her, 2 small faces emerged from the bunk beds. Identical boys with honey-brown skin and curly hair, rubbing sleep from eyes that were unmistakably, impossibly, his own. Lincoln's heart hammered against his ribs. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The portfolio slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. Before we continue this thrilling story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. Donna's expression shifted from shock to something harder, sharper. "Get out." His voice cracked. "I didn't. I said get out." Her voice rose, and the twins sat up fully now, confused and frightened by their mother's tone. "Mommy," one of them whispered. Lincoln couldn't move. He stood rooted in the doorway, staring at the 2 boys who stared back at him with his own face, his own eyes, his own stubborn jawline. 7 years old. The math was devastatingly simple. "Donna," he swallowed hard. "Are they?" "Don't." Her voice was ice. "Don't you dare ask me that question. Not after 8 years. Not after you walked away without a word. You don't get to walk in here in—" "Who is he, Mommy?" the other twin asked, his voice small and uncertain. Donna's eyes filled with tears, but her gaze never left Lincoln's face. "No one," she said coldly. "He's no one." The words hit him like a physical blow. Lincoln took a step backward, his hands raised in surrender. "I am sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought this was— I was supposed to meet." The excuses sounded pathetic even to his own ears. "I'll go." But as he turned toward the door, one of the boys spoke again. "He looks like us." Lincoln stopped. "Donna esse bretiched." And in that terrible, suspended moment, with the ocean rolling beneath them and the truth hanging heavy in the stale cabin air, the man who'd built an empire on certainty realized he'd just stumbled into the one room where all his carefully constructed walls came crashing down. "I think I'm in the wrong room," he finally managed, his voice hollow. But they all knew it was much more than that. Donna's hands trembled as she stood, placing herself between Lincoln and the twins like a human shield. "Get out," she repeated, her voice low and deadly. "Now." "Donna, please." Lincoln's eyes kept darting to the boys, his mind racing through calculations he didn't want to make. 7 years old. 8 years since he'd left. The timeline aligned with brutal precision. "Please." She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp enough to cut. "You don't get to please me." You don't get to walk in here after 8 years and act surprised. You don't get to. Her voice broke, and she steadied herself against the edge of the bed. I didn't know, Lincoln said quietly. You have to believe me, I didn't. You didn't know because you didn't stay. The words erupted from her like a dam breaking. You didn't answer my calls. You changed your number. You disappeared into your fancy corporate world and left me alone and pregnant and terrified. The twins pressed closer to each other. Their identical faces creased with worry. Mommy, why are you crying? Daniel whispered. Donna wiped her eyes roughly, never breaking eye contact with Lincoln. I'm fine, baby. This man was just leaving. But Mommy, Duke started. Now, Donna's voice cracked like a whip. Lincoln took another step back, his hands still raised. His gaze lingered on the boys, on the curve of Duke's nose that matched his own, on Daniel's stubborn chin, on eyes that reflected his face back at him like mirrors. How old are they? That's none of your business. Donna. 7, she snapped. There's 7. Do the math yourself, since numbers are all you care about. The confirmation hit him like a freight train. His knees felt weak. Why didn't you? Tell you. Her laugh was hollow. I tried. For 3 months I tried. But Lincoln King was too busy building his empire to answer calls from the woman he promised forever to. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So I stopped trying. And I built a life for my sons without you. Her sons, not their sons. The distinction wasn't lost on him. I need to, Lincoln started, but Donna was already moving toward him, herding him backward toward the door. You need to leave. You need to go back to your suite and your billion-dollar deals and pretend you never opened this door. She grabbed the door handle, just like you're good at pretending things never happened. Donna, wait. She slammed the door in his face. Lincoln stood in the corridor, his reflection distorted in the polished brass door number, 614, the number he'd been given. But this wasn't the Imperial Suite. This wasn't a conference room. This was the room where his past had been waiting for him all along. He pressed his palm against the door, hearing muffled voices inside. Donna's soothing tones calming the boys, answering their questions with lies about strangers and mistakes. His hand fell to his side. The corridor suddenly felt too narrow, the air too thin. He walked back to the elevator in a daze, his mind replaying those honey-brown eyes, those curls, those faces that were undeniably, impossibly his. In his luxury suite, Lincoln stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the black ocean stretching endlessly beneath a canopy of stars. His phone buzzed repeatedly, his investor wondering where he was, his assistant asking about the meeting, but he couldn't bring himself to look at it. 2 boys. His boys. 7 years of birthdays and first days of school and scraped knees and bedtime stories that he'd missed. 7 years that Donna had carried alone while he'd been building an empire that suddenly felt hollow. Could those boys be mine? He already knew the answer. He'd known at the moment he saw their faces. The question wasn't whether they were his sons. The question was what he was going to do about it. And for the first time in his carefully calculated life, Lincoln King had absolutely no idea. Lincoln didn't sleep. He watched dawn break over the Caribbean, painting the water in shades of gold and pink that would have been beautiful if his world wasn't imploding. His phone had 43 missed calls. He ignored them all. By 7 a.m., the ship was already buzzing with life and gossip. Did you hear about what happened last night? A woman's voice carried across the breakfast buffet line. That CEO, the one in the penthouse suite, apparently burst into some woman's cabin. Just walked right in. I heard she knew him, her companion whispered back. From years ago, and those twin boys she has. Someone said they look exactly like him. Donna's hand froze halfway to the cereal dispenser. She was 3 people behind them in line, Daniel and Duke tugging at her sleeves, oblivious to the conversation that was making her heart race. Probably just trying to get money from him, the first woman said dismissively. You know how these situations go. Donna esse Joe clenched. She grabbed 2 bowls mechanically, steering the boys toward an empty table in the corner, as far from prying eyes as possible. Across the ship, Lincoln's assistant Marcus burst into the suite without knocking, his face pale. "Sir, we have a problem." Lincoln didn't turn from the window. "I'm aware. Social media is lighting up. Someone took a photo of you outside that woman's cabin last night. The merger team is asking questions. The investors want a statement." Marcus thrust his tablet forward, showing a blurry image of Lincoln standing in a corridor, his face clearly visible, his expression shocked. "Mr. King, this could destroy the deal. We need to get ahead of this before." "Cancel the meeting," Lincoln said quietly. "What?" "The 9 a.m. strategy session. Cancel it." Marcus stared at him. "Sir, with all due respect, we're 48 hours from signing. You can't just—" "I can and I am." Lincoln finally turned to face his assistant. "Tell them I have a personal emergency that requires immediate attention." "But the merger—" "We'll wait." Lincoln's voice carried a finality that Marcus had never heard before. "Or it won't. Either way, there's something more important I need to handle." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, saw the look in Lincoln's eyes, and simply nodded. "I'll inform the team." 2 hours later, Lincoln stood at the edge of the Lido deck pool, his eyes scanning the crowd of vacationers until he found them. Donna sat on a lounge chair in a yellow sundress, a large sun hat obscuring her face. The twins splashed in the shallow end, their laughter carrying across the water. But even from this distance, Lincoln could see the tension in Donna's shoulders, the way she kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. He started toward them. Donna sensed his approach before she saw him. Her spine stiffened. When Lincoln's shadow fell across her chair, she didn't look up. "Please leave us alone." "Donna, we need to talk." "No, we don't. Those boys are none of your concern." She finally lifted her head, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. "You made your choice 8 years ago. Nothing's changed." In the pool, Daniel had noticed the tall man standing by their mother. He tugged Duke's arm, and both boys swam to the edge, their matching curious gazes fixed on Lincoln. "Is he bothering you, Mom?" Daniel asked with surprising protectiveness for a 7-year-old. Donna's expression softened. "No, baby. He's just leaving." "Who is he?" Duke asked, tilting his head in that peculiar way that Lincoln recognized because he did the same thing when he was thinking. Donna's voice caught her throat. She looked at her sons, then at Lincoln, then back at her sons. The question hung in the air like a rope bridge over a chasm. Cross it, and everything changes. "Nobody," she finally said, the word heavy with history and hurt. "Nobody you need to know." The twins exchanged glances but said nothing more. They pushed away from the edge and resumed their game. Lincoln stood frozen, the word nobody echoing in his mind. He wanted to argue, to demand answers, to assert his rights. But what rights did he have? He'd forfeited those the day he walked away. The sea rolled endlessly beneath the ship, indifferent to human drama. Donna adjusted her sun hat and opened a book she had no intention of reading. Lincoln remained standing there for another moment before finally turning away. But both of them knew this wasn't over. The storm was just beginning. Lincoln waited until sunset, when the ship's lounge emptied and soft jazz replaced the afternoon's steel drum bands. He'd sent a note through a crew member. "Please. One conversation. That's all I'm asking." Deck 10 lounge at 8 p.m. He didn't know if she'd come. At 8:15, when he'd almost given up, Donna appeared in the doorway. She'd changed into a simple black dress, her braids pulled back, her face carefully composed into a mask of indifference. "You have 15 minutes, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "The boys are with the kids' club, and I need to pick them up by 9. Lincoln nodded, suddenly uncertain where to begin. "Thank you for coming." "Don't thank me. Just talk." He took a breath. "I need to know, are they mine?" Donna's laugh was bitter. "You mean the 2 boys who have your eyes, your chin, your stubborn forehead? The ones who tilt their heads exactly like you when they're confused? Use your billion-dollar brain, Lincoln. I need to hear you say it." "Yes." The word came out sharp as a blade. Daniel and Duke, are your sons. Happy now? The confirmation, even though he'd known, still hit him like a tidal wave. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. Her composure cracked. For 3 months after you left for London, I called. I texted. I sent emails. You never responded. By the 4th month, I realized I was screaming into a void. I changed my number when I moved. The company transition was chaotic. You had to what? Erase your old life so completely that the woman you claimed to love couldn't reach you. Donna's voice rose. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you left. I was 23, terrified, and alone. And you were in boardrooms celebrating your promotion. Lincoln's hands clenched on the table. If I had known, you would have what? She leaned forward, eyes blazing. Come running back? Given up your corner office and your stock options? Don't lie to me, Lincoln. You made your choice when you took that job, without even discussing it with me first. That's not fair. Fair. Her voice carried across the lounge now, drawing glances from the bartender. You want to talk about fair? I spent 9 months growing your children while working 2 jobs because my nursing assistant salary barely covered rent. I went into labor alone because my best friend was out of town. I brought them home to an empty apartment and cried for 3 days straight because I didn't know if I could do it. Lincoln felt each word like a physical blow. Donna. I learned to change diapers with YouTube videos. I survived on 3 hours of sleep for 2 years. I missed their first steps because I was working a night shift. And you, she stood abruptly. You were building your empire. I would have helped if I'd known. Would you? She stared down at him. Or would you have sent child support checks and visited twice a year between business trips? Would you have been there for midnight fevers and first days of school? Or would they have just been another obligation you managed from a distance? The truth in her words silenced him. Donna gathered her purse. Those boys don't need a stranger who happens to share their DNA. They don't need a part-time father who shows up out of guilt. They have me. They have stability. They have love. They deserve to know their father. They deserve a father who wanted them. Her voice broke, not one who had to stumble into the wrong room to discover they existed. She walked away, her heels clicking against the polished floor, leaving Lincoln alone with his thoughts and a truth he couldn't escape. In his sweet hours later, Lincoln stood before the floor-length mirror. He saw what he'd always seen, a successful man in expensive clothes, master of his domain. But tonight, for the first time, he also saw something else. A man who'd built a legacy on the ruins of a life he'd abandoned. A man who'd chosen ambition over love and power over presence. A man who'd won everything and lost what mattered most. His phone buzzed. Another message from his investors. He turned it off and stared at the ocean, wondering if some mistakes were too big to ever make right. Morning came with a decision Donna had made in the sleepless hours before dawn. They would leave at the next port. Grand Cayman was just 8 hours away. She'd lose the rest of the cruise fare, but she'd also escape the whispers, the stares, and most importantly, Lincoln King. Boys, we need to pack, she announced after breakfast, forcing cheerfulness in her voice. We're going to see the island and maybe stay there a few extra days. But Mom, we just got here. Duke protested. I know, sweetie, but I don't feel good, Daniel interrupted quietly. Donna turned to find her son swaying on his feet, his face flushed. She pressed her palm to his forehead and her heart dropped. Baby, you're burning up. I'm cold, Daniel whispered. Then his eyes rolled back and his knees buckled. Daniel! Donna caught him before he hit the floor, Duke screaming beside her. Someone help, please. Within minutes, crew members arrived with a wheelchair. Donna cradled Daniel's limp body, her own tears flowing freely as they rushed through corridors toward the medical center. Duke clung to her dress, sobbing. The ship's doctor, a calm woman in her 50s, immediately took Daniel's vitals. His temperature is 103.8. We need to get down fast. Mrs. Harrison, when did symptoms start? Just now. He was fine an hour ago. Donna's voice shook. Please help him. We will. But I need you to stay calm for your other son. All right. Donna nodded, pulling Duke close while the medical team worked. 20 minutes later, the door burst open. Lincoln stood there, his shirt untucked, his hair disheveled, his chest heaving like he'd run the entire way. I heard, what are you doing here? Donna's voice was sharp, but her eyes were red and desperate. A crew member mentioned a child with a medical emergency on Deck 6. I just knew. He stepped closer, his gaze locked on Daniel's small form on the examination table, now hooked to and for. Is he okay? Viral infection, the doctor explained. His fever's dangerously high. We're monitoring him closely. He'll need to stay here tonight, possibly longer. Can I? Lincoln's voice cracked. Can I stay? Donna opened her mouth to refuse, then looked at Duke trembling beside her, at Daniel's pale face, at the way her own hands wouldn't stop shaking. She was exhausted. She was terrified. And for the first time in 8 years, she couldn't do this alone. Fine, she whispered. The night stretched endlessly. Lincoln pulled a chair beside Daniel's bed while Donna sat on the other side, Duke curled in her lap, finally asleep. The medical center's fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Lincoln dipped a cloth in cool water and gently pressed it to Daniel's forehead. The boy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Hey there, champ, Lincoln said softly. How are you feeling? Tired, Daniel mumbled. Who are you? Lincoln glanced at Donna, who said nothing, her expression unreadable. I'm a friend of your mom's. From a long time ago. Oh. Daniel's eyes drifted to the window, where stars scattered across the black sky. I like stars. Yeah? Me too. Lincoln continued, cooling his forehead. You see that really bright one there? That's actually Venus. People think it's a star, but it's a planet. Really? Daniel's voice was weak, but curious. Really? And that cluster there, those are the Pleiades. Ancient sailors used them to navigate across oceans. For the next hour, Lincoln talked about constellations, about ships and explorers, about the universe stretched out beyond their window. Daniel listened with drowsy fascination, occasionally asking questions that reminded Lincoln so much of himself as a child that his throat tightened. Duke woke up and climbed down to join them, pressing close to Lincoln's chair to hear the stories. And that's Orion's belt, Lincoln said, pointing. 3 stars in a perfect line. Sailors called them the 3 Kings. Like your name, Daniel whispered. King. Lincoln's breath caught. Yes, like my name. As dawn approached, Daniel's fever finally broke. His breathing steady, isn't it? She leaned forward. You want to fix your reputation, Lincoln. Not us. You always did. 8 years ago, you chose your image over me. Over us. Why should now be any different? Lincoln's jaw tightened. Because I didn't know about them then. Because I spent all night watching our son fight a fever and realized I've wasted 8 years. Our son. Donna's voice rose. Now he's our son. Yesterday, he was a stranger. Last week, he didn't exist to you. Donna. No. She stood, her hands shaking. You don't get to walk in here with your private dining rooms and your protective gestures and expect me to believe you've changed overnight. Mom. Duke's small voice cut through the tension. Both adults turned to find him watching them with worried eyes. Are you fighting again? Donna's expression softened immediately. No, baby. We're just talking. Daniel, stronger now after sleep and medication, looked between them with unsettling perception. He stayed all night with me, he said quietly to his mother. He told us about stars. He didn't have to. Donna's breath caught. He's nice, Mommy, Duke added. I like him. Lincoln's chest tightened at those simple words. He watched Donna's face cycle through emotions. Anger, fear, something that might have been hope before settling on exhaustion. I know you do, she whispered to the boys. Then to Lincoln, her voice harder. But liking someone and trusting them are different things. I know. Lincoln's voice was steady. And I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I'm not the man who walked away. Donna studied him for a long moment. This man who looked like her son's, who'd held Daniel's hand through the night, who was risking his billion-dollar empire just by sitting here with them. One chance, she said finally. That's all you get. Lincoln nodded, knowing that one chance was more than he deserved. And as the twins began chattering about the dolphins they'd seen from the window, their voices bright with childhood resilience, both adults sat in uncomfortable silence, bound together by two boys who glowed in ways neither could deny whenever Lincoln was near. The storm rolled in that afternoon like fate itself, dark clouds swallowing the sun, wind whipping the ocean into fury. The captain announced that all passengers should remain inside, but Donna couldn't breathe in the confined spaces, couldn't stand another moment of strangers' stares and whispered speculation. She found Lincoln on the observation deck, hands gripped on the railing, facing the tempest. "Are you insane?" she shouted over the wind. "There's a storm warning." He turned, rain already soaking through his white shirt. "I needed air. What you need is to go back to your suite and your investors and your real life." She stepped closer, her dress whipping around her legs. "Stop playing house with us, Lincoln. The boys are getting attached, and when you leave, because you will leave, it's going to destroy them." "I'm not leaving." "Yes, you are." Lightning split the sky, illuminating her face, fierce and beautiful and terrified. "You had your chance 8 years ago. You chose your career, your reputation, your perfect life. You built an empire without us. I built a prison." His voice cracked with the thunder. "Every deal I closed, every million I made, every magazine that called me a success, it was all bars on a cell I couldn't escape." Rain poured between them, heavy and relentless. "You don't get to rewrite history," Donna said, but her voice wavered. "You left me. You chose. I chose wrong." Lincoln moved closer, his eyes wild with something she'd never seen before. Raw, unguarded truth. "I was 25 and terrified, and convinced I had to prove I was more than the poor kid from nowhere. So I took the London job without thinking, without asking, without realizing I was walking away from the only real thing I'd ever had." "Stop. I can't." He was close enough now that she could see water streaming down his face. Rain or tears, she couldn't tell. "Do you know how many nights I've stood in penthouses that cost more than most people make in a lifetime and felt absolutely nothing? How many parties I've attended alone? How many achievements felt hollow because you weren't there to share them? That's not my problem." "I know." His hands came up, not touching her, but close. "I know it's not your problem. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I walked away and you built something beautiful without me. But, Donna," his voice dropped to barely above a whisper, "those boys, our sons, they're the only real thing I've created in 8 years. Everything else is just monuments to my own fear." Lightning flashed again. Thunder shook the deck beneath their feet. "What were you afraid of?" she asked, and hated how her voice broke. "Everything." The confession came out raw. Failing, not being enough, becoming my father, absent, useless, forgotten. He laughed bitterly. "So I became successful instead. I built wealth and power thinking that's what made a man. But all I really did was become absent anyway, just with a better excuse." Donna's tears mixed with rain, hot against her cold skin. "You hurt me. You broke me. I know. I cried for months. I hated you. I still hate you. I know. But I also—" Her voice caught. She looked at him through the storm. This man who'd shattered her, who'd given her the two greatest gifts of her life, who stood before her now, not as the polished but as something more vulnerable, more human, more like the boy she'd fallen in love with before ambition had consumed him. "I loved you so much it scared me," she whispered. "And when you left, I thought I'd never survive it. But I did. And I made sure our sons would never feel that kind of abandonment." "You're an incredible mother," Lincoln said. "They're extraordinary because of you. Not me. Never me." The rain was cold, but something warm flickered in Donna's chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of it. "If you walk away again," she started. "I won't. You can't promise that. Watch me." He held her gaze. "I'm not the man I was. Maybe I never will be the man I should have been. But I'm here now, and I'm not running. Not from you. Not from them. Not anymore. Thunder rumbled, but softer now. The storm was passing. Donna stood there, soaked and shaking, seeing not the billionaire, but the broken man who'd finally stopped running from his mistakes. One chance, she repeated, her earlier words taking on new weight. That's all you get. It's more than I deserve. They stood in the rain, the ocean raging beneath them, two people bound by the past and uncertain of the future, but for the first time in 8 years, facing it together. Morning brought chaos. Donna woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Messages from old friends, former colleagues, even her aunt in Atlanta she hadn't spoken to in years. She scrolled through with growing dread. Billionaire Lincoln King's secret family revealed. CEO's hidden twins. A Caribbean cruise scandal. King Capital stock drops 12% amid family drama. TMZ had the photo. So did Page 6, Business Insider, and every major news outlet. The image from the infirmary, yes, but also new ones. Lincoln on the deck with her in the rain, Lincoln having breakfast with the twins, Lincoln shielding them from cameras. Her private life exposed to the world. Mom. Daniel appeared in the doorway, Duke behind him. Why are people taking pictures of us? Donna's heart cracked. Don't worry about it, baby. Just some silly grown-up stuff. But she was worried. Terrified, actually. A knock at the door made her jump. Lincoln stood there, Marcus hovering anxiously behind him. We need to talk, Lincoln said. In the hallway, Marcus thrust his tablet forward. Sir, the board is demanding a statement. They want you to deny everything. Say the children aren't yours, that this woman is attempting to extort you. That. No. Marcus blinked. Sir, your reputation is about to take care of itself. Lincoln turned to Donna. I'm holding a press conference. In 1 hour. Ship's event hall. You're what? Donna's voice rose. I'm telling the truth. Lincoln, you can't. Your investors will. Let them. His jaw was set in that stubborn line she recognized. I'm done hiding. Done pretending. Done choosing my image over what matters. But the boys don't have to be there. This is about me taking responsibility. Publicly. He met her eyes. Unless you want me to stay silent. Donna searched his face, looking for hesitation, for calculation, for any sign this was another manipulation. She found only certainty. 1 hour, she whispered. The event hall filled quickly. Journalists who'd been aboard covering the cruise. Passengers with cameras, crew members whispering. Marcus had tried to limit access, but failed. This was the story of the year. Lincoln stood at the podium, cameras flashing like lightning. His hands gripped the edges, knuckles white. In the back row, Donna stood alone. Lincoln had insisted the twins stay with the kids' club, away from this circus. She'd agreed, but now she wished she'd stayed away too. Thank you for coming, Lincoln began, his voice steady despite the chaos. I know why you're here. You want a statement about the photos, about the woman and children. So here it is. The room fell silent. 8 years ago, I made a choice that I've regretted every day since. I chose my career over the woman I loved. I moved to London for a promotion and never looked back. His voice roughened. I changed my number. I buried myself in work. I convinced myself I was building something that mattered. Cameras clicked frantically. What I was actually doing was running. For responsibility. From vulnerability. From the fear that I wouldn't be enough. He paused. 3 days ago, I walked into the wrong room on this ship and discovered that the woman I abandoned, Donna Harrison, had been raising twin boys. My sons, Daniel and Duke, 7 years old. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I didn't know they existed. That's not an excuse. It's a failure. My failure. I made it impossible for her to reach me, and she had to build a life alone while I built an empire that meant nothing. Lincoln's eyes found Donna in the back. She stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. I've made mistakes. Countless mistakes. But the biggest wasn't a business deal or a bad investment. It was walking away from someone who believed in me when no one else did. Someone who deserved better than my ambition and my cowardice. His voice cracked. So if the world needs to know who Lincoln King really is, this is me. Not the CEO, not the success story. Just a man who's trying to earn back what he never should have lost. He looked directly at the cameras. And if my investors, my board, or anyone else has a problem with that, they know where the door is. Silence. Then chaos. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, Marcus looking like he might faint. But Donna only saw Lincoln, standing there stripped of everything but truth, risking his empire, his reputation, everything he'd built for them. This time, he wasn't running. This time, he was staying. And for the first time in 8 years, she believed him. The storm had passed, both the one in the sky and the one that had been brewing for 8 years. Morning came soft and golden, the ship gliding through waters so calm they looked like glass. The Caribbean stretched endlessly in every direction, painted in shades of turquoise and sapphire that seemed almost unreal. Lincoln found them on the observation deck at sunrise. Daniel had fully recovered, his energy restored, chasing his brother around the deck chairs. Duke shrieked with laughter, then stopped abruptly when he saw Lincoln approaching. "Mr. Lincoln." He ran forward without hesitation, grabbing Lincoln's hand. "Did you see the dolphins? There were like 1,000,000. Maybe not 1,000,000, Lincoln said, his throat tight, but definitely a lot. Daniel joined them, more cautious but curious. "Mom said you talked to reporters yesterday. About us." Lincoln knelt to their level. "I did. I told them the truth, that you're my sons, and I should have been there from the beginning." "Why weren't you?" Daniel asked with the blunt honesty of childhood. "Because I was scared and stupid, and I made a terrible mistake." Lincoln's voice was steady. "But I'm here now, if you'll let me be." The twins exchanged one of their mysterious twin glances, communicating in the silent language only they understood. Then Duke squeezed Lincoln's hand. "Okay," he said simply. "You can stay." As if it were that easy, as if forgiveness were a choice children made every day. Lincoln's eyes burned. "Thank you." Donna stood at the far railing, watching the exchange. She wore a white sundress that caught the morning breeze, her braids loose around her shoulders. She looked peaceful, whole, everything he'd walked away from. Lincoln approached slowly, leaving the boys to their game. He stood beside her, close but not touching, both of them facing the endless ocean. "Your stock dropped 18%, Donna said quietly. "I know. 3 investors pulled out of the merger." "I know. Marcus says your board is considering removing you as CEO. Let them." Lincoln's voice was calm. "I've spent 8 years building something that never made me happy. Maybe it's time to build something that does." Donna turned to look at him. "And what's that?" "A life. A real one. With people who matter." He met her gaze. "You don't have to forgive me. I know trust isn't given. It's earned. But if you let me, I'd like to try. Every day. For as long as it takes. And when the novelty wears off, when being a father gets hard and messy and inconvenient, then I'll still be there." His voice was fierce. "I'm not the man I was, Donna. That man was hollow. He had everything and nothing. But this," he gestured to where the twins played, their laughter carrying on the wind. "This is everything." A wave splashed against the hull, sending spray across the deck. The twins squealed and ran toward it, Duke slipping on the wet surface. Lincoln moved instinctively, catching him before he fell. "Careful, buddy." "Again." Duke laughed. "Make another wave." Daniel joined them, and somehow Lincoln was kneeling with both boys, all 3 watching the ocean together, pointing at flying fish and distant islands. Donna watched them. This man who looked like her sons, who'd risked everything to claim them, who was learning what it meant to be present instead of powerful. The tension she'd carried for 8 years, the anger, the hurt, the protective wall around her heart, finally began to crack. She exhaled slowly. "Then start here," she whispered. Lincoln looked up, hope breaking across his face like sunrise. She moved to join them, and Duke immediately grabbed her hand, connecting them all in a chain. Mother, sons, father. A family, fragile and new but whole. Look, Daniel pointed at the horizon. You can see where the water meets the sky. That's the horizon, Lincoln said. It goes on forever, like the ocean, like possibility. They stood together as the ship sailed toward port, the morning sun turning everything gold. Other passengers walked past, some staring, some smiling, some taking pictures they'd share with captions about redemption and second chances. But Lincoln King, the once untouchable CEO who'd built empires and conquered markets, didn't notice any of them. He was holding his son's hands. He was standing beside the woman who'd given him more than he deserved. He was watching the horizon stretch endlessly before them, reflecting not just sunlight, but the future he'd finally stopped running from. No boardroom could compete with this. No contract could compare. No amount of wealth or power could buy what he'd found in that wrong room. A family he never knew he needed, waiting to teach him what it meant to finally come home. The ocean rolled beneath them, vast and forgiving, carrying them all toward whatever came next. Together,